Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Iris Gonzalez, and I am the Adult and University Educator at the Tampa Museum of Art. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this virtual lecture on the intersection of ancient myth and heavy metal music. So there are couple ways to participate in this evening's program through Zoom webinar. You'll see a couple buttons on your screen for chat and Q&A. In the chat, you can choose to send messages to just the panelists and the speakers, or to everyone, including all the attendees. So you can use the Q&A function to send us your questions throughout the presentation. We're monitoring the Q&A and the chat, so we'll keep track of all the questions and we'll answer them live after the lecture. And now I'm delighted to introduce Branko van Oppen, the Richard E. Perry Curator of Greek and Roman Art at the Tampa Museum of Art, who will introduce our guest speaker and begin today's presentation.
Well, thank you,
Branko?
Iris, and hello, everyone. Welcome to our virtual Antiquities Circle lecture, and thank you for joining us tonight in such great numbers. It's a real pleasure to see such interest in our topic today, the reception of ancient mythology in contemporary heavy metal music. Very excited to introduce our speaker today, Jeremy Swist, who is Assistant Professor in the Department of Romance and Classical Studies at Michigan State University. Dr. Swist has written and presented papers widely on ancient history and religion in heavy metal, such as The Reception of Sparta for the Companion of Metal Music, published by Cambridge University Press. But it isn't all heavy metal that Dr. Swist is specialized in. He's also an expert in Neoplatonism, Sophism, and late antique history. His most recent publication is a biography of Julian the Apostate, Julian Augustus, Platonism, Myth, and the Refounding of Rome, published by Oxford University Press. Jeremy and I have lots in common, not only ancient history, good music, good food, we love cats, so what's not to love? But let me keep you no longer, Jeremy. Please share your screen and take it from here.
All right, thank you, Branko, and everyone else at the Tampa Museum of Art. In Tampa, the Tampa area is one of the birthplaces of death metal, specifically with bands like Morbid Angel, which I'll feature in this lecture. And so I figured this is an appropriate setting as any. So let me get things shared, and we will rock and roll here. Okay. All right, hopefully everything is visible now. So there's my title slide. So today I'll be talking about Ta Megala Theria, okay, which is Greek for the great beasts. And we'll see why I chose that title as we go along here. And we'll also discuss that wonderful artwork on the right there as well. So as I often do in these talks about metal, it's important to actually hear what metal sounds like. And not just look at lyrics and album artwork. It's really about the music. And so this is a lyric video with several live performance photos spliced in by a Swedish symphonic metal band called Therion, right? So Greek for beast. And the title of the song is Typhon. And this came out in 2004. And this lyric video was made by a fan, and it has the English lyrics also translated into Spanish for the many, many Latin American fans of this band. So we'll listen to part of this song and pay attention to the kind of story that the lyrics are telling about Typhon. think that's enough for time's sake. They go into the chorus again. But what the song is about appears to be directly inspired by the theogony of the Greek poet Hesiod, and specifically the episode, also mentioned in other Greek sources like Pseudo-Apollodorus, of the Typhonomachy. In other words, the last major challenge that Zeus faced after the War of the Titans, the War of the Giants. Finally, Gaia, the Earth, in her last gambit against these upstart Olympian gods, couples with the underworld, pit of underworld Tartarus, and gives birth to this fire-breathing dragon with various kind of monstrous forms, part human, part serpent, Typhon, otherwise known as Typhoeus. And here we have, a bronze, a metal Typhon in the collection at the Tampa Museum of Art, but we have other depictions such as this black figure, this archaic black figure vase, right? So Typhon is seen as this very bestial dragon, serpent, chaos monster, right, that threatens to plunge the world, right, into total devastation. And Zeus, this is his toughest challenge, and he eventually overcomes him and places Mount Etna on top of him. And as a result, Etna is now a fire-breathing volcano because this is a fire-breathing dragon that is trapped forever under the mountain. But as we saw in the lyrics to the song Typhon by Therion, they have rewritten the theogony, or in other words, this is a sequel to the theogony in which Typhon actually rises again, okay, and takes revenge on Zeus and the Olympians and is successful in overthrowing them, okay, and plunging the world into chaos and asserting his claim to the rule of the cosmos against the Olympians here, okay. Often when I think about the myth of Typhon versus Zeus and the theogony, I also think about other creation myths as well of the ancient Mediterranean and Near East, which feature kind of this final showdown of primordial dragon combat. This is something I teach about a lot in my mythology courses with our unit on what I call tales of creation. And so we often compare the combat of Zeus and Typhoeus with, say, the combat of the Babylonian chief god Marduk, another storm god like Zeus, versus Tiamat, who is this primordial female serpent who represents the original primordial ocean of salt water, right, and is the source of all of the gods. And Marduk defeats Tiamat and uses her body to construct the cosmos that we live in now, okay? And another part of that mythos, okay, which is told in Mesopotamian texts such as the Enuma Elish and the Atrahasis, is that Tiamat had a general, okay, named Kingu, who led her forces against Marduk and the gods. And that after Marduk was successful in defeating Tiamat, he punished Kingu by shedding his blood and using the blood of Kingu, mixing it with the earth in order to create human beings. So in other words, the blood of Kingu flows in our veins, right? Who had been this adversary of Marduk and the gods, okay? And so the song Typhon by Therion is not unique in kind of rewriting these primordial dragon combat narratives from the mythological creation stories. If we look at the Israeli band Melechesh, a song that I've been aware of for many years is called Rebirth of the Nemesis. And this is a song that similarly rewrites the Enuma Elish, quite literally, right, as we see in the lyrics here, in which Tiamat rises again, right, to challenge Marduk and the gods once more, and this time she is successful, okay? The idea that Marduk and the gods are not fated to rule the universe forever, right, that the original primordial serpent nemesis will rise again, okay, and claim what is hers. And as we see from the album artwork, this band takes this concept and employs it in some interesting imagery here. So first off, we see a 17th century illustration of the Tower of Babel on here, though it's a photographic negative, okay, as if it is rewriting the Tower of Babel narrative and challenging the gods or God from below. Also, what we see is an Assyrian relief here, uh, but it's been changed. It's been photoshopped. It is the relief sculpture that many people identify with Gilgamesh or some sort of hero who tames the lion. And what they did is they took the lion's head and they photoshopped it onto the sculpture here, along with some other Mesopotamian lion sculptures, in order to kind of reclaim and acknowledge the bestial aspect of man as supreme here, which is essentially what Tiamat and monsters like Typhon kind of represent as well, as they're sort of these half beast, half human forms that sort of represent who we truly are. We can also look at other traditions in the neighborhood that even precede this. So in my mythology classes, we also talk about kind of the Egyptian analog to this primordial dragon combat, though in the Egyptian version, this is something that actually happens every night. In other words, the sun god Ra descends below the horizon and then travels on a boat through the Egyptian underworld, the Duat, where he does battle with, well, the Egyptian chaos serpent Apophis, otherwise known as Apep in Egyptian. And we have many examples of artwork showing this kind of nightly primordial dragon combat here, as you can see. Okay, so Typhon, Ra, Apophis. Okay, we see them showing up in heavy metal with this kind of rewritten narrative, and we see the same for Apophis as well. So this is an Australian black metal band called Drowning the Light, and they have sort of a half concept album called 10th Region of the Night and Paradise Slaves. And you can see it's essentially telling the narrative of Apophis being triumphant over Ra, quite literally, okay, and plunging the world into darkness and chaos here, right? And the back of this album, okay, also is quite suggestive. They use a detail from the Thomas Cole painting Desolation, which is the last painting in his Course of Empire series, which shows kind of the rise and fall of an archetypal empire, ending with desolation following its destruction. Okay, so the suggestion here is that the triumph of Apophis, of these primordial chaos monsters, returns, okay, the earth to its primordial desolation before civilization sort of corrupted it. So this is a slide I also use in my myth courses just to sort of relate how this motif of primordial dragon combat, as you might call it, okay, has various kind of conflict of opposites, okay, gendered opposites, generational opposites, okay, a conflict of kind of the human form versus the bestial form, the conflict of the celestial Iranian sky gods versus the primordial gods that preceded them, that gave birth to them, that are represented by the primordial abyss, okay, or Mother Earth. The triumph of technology over nature, okay, represented by the natural weapons, the fire breathing, versus thunderbolts forged by the Cyclopes, for instance. The triumph of order and separation over chaos in the primal unity when all the elements are fused together. Okay, the triumph of civilization and culture over nature and barbarism. Okay, so what we see in some of these metal songs and albums I talked about is, well, the vanquished now are in various ways reasserting themselves, okay, and rewriting the narrative of this motif. Now, those are some qualitative examples, but I can also do a quantitative study with this, thanks to a resource that not just metal study scholars, but metalheads in general, kind of use as almost a Bible. And this is the Encyclopedia Metallum, otherwise known as the Metal Archives. You can tell a classicist didn't name this. And this is an online open access, open source database of all metal bands in history all over the world that have recorded material. And so it's very common for a metalhead to use the search function here, okay, to find bands that they might have heard of, to find out more about them. And what's also useful, especially for research purposes, is that advanced search function. And so what I did, over the course of an afternoon, was type the names of Typhon, Tiamat, Apophis, and their variants into this advanced search for bands with those names in the name, albums with that in the title, and songs that have their names in the title, as well as songs that have their name in their lyrics. So for instance, I type Tiamat into lyrics and it gives me 653 separate entries. Now, there's a lot of duplicates here because some bands, right, have the same song on a full-length studio album and a live album, et cetera, et cetera. So I had to actually go and hand count, okay, which was a bit tedious, but I was able to produce some interesting results here. So here are Ta Megala Theria in the Encyclopedia Metallum, the great beasts. Okay, so Typhon, otherwise known as Typhoeus in Hesiod, Apophis or Apet, and then Tiamat. So there are 12 bands, 10 bands, and 3 with them in their names, just alone. Okay, there's not as many for Tiamat because Tiamat, there's a very famous Swedish death metal band called that, so the others didn't bother. There are 3, 11, and 13 albums just with their name in the title. Okay, some of them being concept albums. Okay, there are 55, 206, and 103 songs just titled Typhon, Apophis, or Tiamat, or have their names in the title alone. And then finally, songs that have their name mentioned in the lyrics. Okay, Typhon, 157 songs, separate songs. Apophis, 256, and then Tiamat, 470. Okay, this is a lot of data here to go through. And these are bands that are all over the world in various subgenres and styles of metal, okay, with various agendas here. And so this seems to be such a widespread phenomenon that it's worth trying to make sense of. So let's give some context for what's going on here. This is part of a much wider phenomenon that I and a growing number of my colleagues and friends in metal music studies are researching and publishing on, and that's metal's reception of antiquity and pre-modernity at large. Okay, so as you can see there are thousands of songs on a broad array of topics, not just in mythology, but history, literature. Okay, we have examples of ancient philosophy and art and other things. There's a large focus on Greece, Rome, Egypt, and Mesopotamia, but we have also the antiquity of Mesoamerica and medieval Japan. The list goes on and on. Okay, and hundreds of bands worldwide. This isn't just a small handful of bands who are just specializing in this, but there's several bands that that dip into these topics kind of regularly. Okay, lots of concept albums that tell a whole story of an historical event or process or myth, etc. Okay, and there's a growing body of scholarship. I'm not the first one to notice this and to work on this. And so I just want to recognize plenty of other people who I call metal classicists and ancient historians, etc. Okay, so even wider context. What is heavy metal? Okay, for those unfamiliar. All right, well, you heard an example of it musically as well as kind of while you're in the waiting room coming in here. But heavy metal has been around for over 5 decades. Okay, it arguably started with Black Sabbath's debut album, right, in the beginning of 1970, and it has since spread all over the world. Okay, there are metal bands in most countries, if not most countries on Earth, and metal scenes that are increasingly interconnected in the global metal scene with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of fans at this point. Okay, what defines metal music? Well, sonically, heaviness, okay, aggression, speed, okay, and sort of the aesthetics of extremes, right? There's no such thing as moderation, right? It's always about over-the-top melodrama, okay, exploring the extremes of the human condition, right? Metal is about rebellion. It's about transgression. It's about provocation, okay? It owes a lot to shock rock, to punk rock, okay, and other forms of rock and roll that are trying to rock the boat, right, to challenge, at least symbolically, okay, various sociopolitical, religious codes and institutions of conformity, right? Speaking truth to power, right? Valuing liberty, okay, over conformity. And as we saw, romanticization of pre-modernity is widespread as well, right? If it is a rejection of kind of the globalized neoliberal capitalist order, then many bands are going to look nostalgically at the pre-modern, pre-capitalist, pre-globalized past, right? With rose-colored glasses quite a bit. I don't have time to get into the evolution of various metal subgenres. My data that I'm working with kind of seems to transcend subgenre generally, but there's just to give you an idea of metal's evolution, there's various subgenres here. And once again, you can use the metal archives also to talk about where these metal bands are. And so this gives you an idea of their distribution, though this map is already out of date by 4 years. Okay, there's definitely more metal scenes developing in the global south, in Africa, in Asia, despite the original traditional concentration in Northern Europe and North America, as you can see. So in sum, metal has no borders and metal rules the globe, whether you like it or not. Okay, so I already mentioned that metal music studies is a thing. Okay, it's been around for at least a couple decades now. There are metal studies conferences. There is a music studies journal. Okay, there's the Cambridge Companion to Metal Music, right? That Bronco mentioned. There's conferences, okay, and other publications, right? So I and my fellow metal classicists and ancient historians, we have a nice growing body of scholarship to work with and theory to work with by musicologists, sociologists, and others working in metal studies that give us a lot of help because we're literature people and we're getting a little bit out of our comfort zones looking at this music. And so here's just a couple examples of how metal studies and ancient studies have combined into publications and edited volumes and conferences as well, right? What interests me, what has resonated with me so much in metal studies scholarship is actually something that was written in one of the original metal studies publications, which was actually a monograph by the sociologist Dina Weinstein that was published back in 1991 called Heavy Metal, the Music and Its Culture. And what she talks about is she's talking about kind of what are the major themes of heavy metal. And she calls it heavy metal sort of a ditheism of these two Greek gods that symbolize kind of two sides of the same coin of that is heavy metal, and that is Dionysus and Chaos. Okay, Dionysus represents the vital forces of life through various forms of ecstasy, right? Getting on our wild side, getting in touch with our animal nature, okay, spiritual liberation, etc. And chaos complements that. Chaos is about negation, it's about destruction, it's about resisting order in all of its forms. So you can see how liberation and negation and rebellion all go hand in hand, right? There's also the sense that chaos represents the primordial void, the primordial condition of the universe, if you follow, the Hesiod's narrative here. And so you're starting to see where things are going in terms of why these primordial chaos monsters in metal seem to have this charisma for these bands that I discussed so far. Now, when you talk about the development of metal and its interest in this theme, important context is to look at specifically the genesis of extreme metal in the 1980s with bands like Venom from the UK, Bathory from Sweden, Merciful Fate from Denmark, and Possessed from the US, and many more. And metal study scholars like Keith Con-Harris have explored, what are sort of the major characteristics of extreme metal. These being, the heirs to thrash metal, black metal, death metal, okay, the screaming vocals, the very sort of inaccessible, aggressive sound, and also very provocative and dark themes. So Con Harris would say that extreme metal is all about transgression, right? Crossing boundaries, pushing the envelope of what is considered tasteful and acceptable, right? And often that is used sonically with extreme sounds, visually with very provocative and rebellious and off-putting imagery, satanic imagery, anti-Christian imagery, disgusting imagery, and of course verbal transgression, right? All of the lyrics that would accompany those kinds of themes. And so very quickly, extreme metal seems to fixate, at least symbolically, on the figure of Satan and the symbolism of Satanism and blasphemy and anti-Christianity, not necessarily because they were actual Satanists, right? But more because in the Christian tradition, and heavy metal has traditionally originated in majority Christian countries, Satan represents the archetypal rebel. He's the symbol of primordial rebellion. And so he's sort of the ultimate symbol of someone who transgresses more than any other. It's the ultimate transgressive imagery. And so bands kind of fixate on that, even if they don't believe in Satan, or they don't actually believe in the anti-Christian messages that might accompany that, but they go in for the aesthetic, okay, for the shock value. That's what bands like Venom and Bathory especially and Possessed were going into here, okay? They dabble in occultism, okay? They read some of the lore surrounding kind of popular Satanism. Some bands take it more seriously. And as extreme metal evolves into the 1990s with the rise of Norwegian black metal and elsewhere, we do have some bands taking it more seriously with expressions of outright misanthropy and nihilism, and going even further than that politically as well. Okay, but we don't need to get into that today. So here's an example of one of the original extreme metal bands, one of the original black metal bands from Newcastle, UK, Venom, right? And this is a band that is definitely on record saying that they are not actual Satanists, okay? They are basically just doing this for art's sake. They're having fun. They're being provocative for its own sake. This is symbolic youthful rebellion, okay, that is ultimately being channeled through this music, okay? And their third album from 1984 is called At War with Satan. And the first half of the album is this very long song, which tells the story of Satan leading his legions, his infernal legions, out of hell and declaring war on God and the angels in heaven, taking revenge, okay, for being cast out of heaven originally and taking it back. And so you can see these are the first couple stanzas of the song, and you can see that it's already anticipating the triumph of Satan and his rebel angels over the heavens that is at this song. So in other words, this is sort of a rewritten apocalyptic narrative, right, in which this primordial rebel actually succeeds in sort of a revenge narrative. And revenge narratives are very popular in heavy metal. Okay. Another band that is a product of this first wave of extreme metal in the 1980s is a band from Switzerland called Celtic Frost. And in 1985, okay, a year after that Venom album, they put out their first full studio album called Ta Mega Therion. Okay, and this is the inspiration for this lecture. It is essentially the singular of Ta Megalatheria in Greek, okay, the great beast. And as you can see, the cover artwork that this band chose was by another Swiss artist, the surrealist artist H.R. Geiger, right, who works in airbrush. He designed the Xenomorph in the Alien franchise. And you can see this is a 1977 painting of him called Satan I. And it's pretty straightforward what it's depicting here. And actually, H.R. Geiger had been close friends with this band up until he passed away a few years ago. So why are they using this phrase in Greek, ta megatherion? Okay, They're associating it with Satan, with the devil here, okay, the great beast. Where are they getting this from? Well, the same place probably that the band Therion itself, okay, that we started this lecture with, got it from. Okay, this is one of the earlier albums by Therion from Sweden. Okay, they started as a death metal band and slowly added more symphonic elements, and they starting with this album called Symphony Masses Hodrakon Hodmegas. Okay, which means the Great Dragon. Which you can see on the album artwork here. It is by Christian Wahlen, who is one of the most famous and prolific artists for heavy metal and death metal cover artwork in the early 90s. And you can see perhaps the influence of H.R. Geiger as well is in here, though I'm not an art historian to confirm that. Well, some of you may know where they are getting some of this language from. And just as Venom are rewriting the apocalyptic narratives, right? So bands like Celtic Frost and Therion are taking this language from the Book of Revelation, right? The Christian apocalypse narrative. And if you read it in Greek, okay, the passages, chapters 12 through 13, okay, have that language. The great dragon, Ho Draco and Homegos, the ancient serpent, the one called the devil and Satan, who in John of Patmos's Apocalypse is not actually the same as the beast, the Therion. Okay, there's actually two separate beasts that come after Satan. Okay, the first is one that rises from the sea, the one with the 10 horns and the 7 heads here. Okay, and this is a beast that is given authority by Satan to rule the world. But then another beast rises from the earth, right? And essentially it spreads the propaganda for the sea beast. Okay, that's sort of the succession here. And so what we see here is in these bands like Therion and Celtic Frost and others, we see a conflation of Satan, the great dragon or serpent, with the beasts of the sea, the beast of the earth. And again, if you remember the primordial dragon combat, right, the earth, like Gaia, the source of Typhon, the primordial sea, like Tiamat, you can probably see where things are going here. Now, not all bands are like Melechesh or Therion or others that are going directly to ancient texts like Hesiod's Theogony or the Enuma Elish or some of the Egyptian sources for Ra versus Apophis. The vast majority of bands that are making up that data set of mentions of Tiamat and Typhon and Apep are probably receiving these by way of 20th century occultism, starting with the writings of the British occultist Aleister Crowley here, right, who makes mention of some of these beings. But also there's a very large influence on bands like Celtic Frost and many others of the writings of H.P. Lovecraft, okay, the supernatural horror writer, and especially his Cthulhu mythos, right? The idea that the primordial original ancient gods, okay, were these kind of chaos monsters like Cthulhu, right? The ancient ones who will one day waken from their sleep and rise from the sea and come from beyond the universe to take back what is theirs and plunge the world into madness and chaos. Okay? Another important influence on a lot of these bands, especially bands interested in the occult, is interested in kind of the aesthetics of extreme metal, even if they don't actually, believe what they're saying, is popular Satanism, such as that popularized by Anton LaVey with the publication of the Satanic Bible in 1969. Okay, and one of the earliest parts of the Satanic Bible is the 9 satanic statements of what Satan represents. Now, LaVeyan Satanism doesn't believe in an actual Satan; it is an atheistic movement, and they believe that Satan is a symbol of various things about human nature. And number 7 is what's the most relevant here. It says that Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who, because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development, has become the most vicious animal of all. Oh, goodness. Okay, so again, the idea of Satanism is kind of accepting and embracing the idea that human beings are animals and that they are some of the most fiercest animals, rather than angels who are separate from nature in some way. Okay. Another early part of the Satanic Bible is the so-called infernal names. And the idea is that what LaVey does here is he looks at various mythological figures from throughout world mythology and world and ancient religions and identifies various of them as proto-satanic figures, or in other words, the equivalent of Satan in that other tradition. And Typhon is included. He says this is the Greek personification of Satan. So, in other words, Satan is an idea that manifests in every tradition as this sort of half beast, half man sort of figure who rises from the earth or the sea or the underworld to plunge the world into chaos, is eventually overthrown, the archetypal rebel, right? But again, this is symbolic of kind of humans' need to kind of separate their own animal, bestial nature from themselves and represent it in this symbol, which is this satanic figure. Okay. Another important influence from occultism is where a lot of these influences of Satanism, Crowley's occult magic, the writings of Lovecraft, and also an interest in Mesopotamian mythology as this sort of pre-Christian source of occult knowledge, is the Necronomicon, okay, which is a book that is mentioned in Lovecraft's writings but never actually existed. But various writers in the 1970s published what they called the Necronomicon, passing it off as such. And in the introduction to one of these editions called the Simon Necronomicon, they actually helpfully kind of show the comparisons between Lovecraft, Crowley, and Sumer, the Mesopotamian tradition, of the equivalents of all of these deities. And so one of the important ones here is Lovecraft's ancient ones, including Cthulhu, okay, are the equivalent of Satan, the equivalent of Tiamat, right, in the Mesopotamian tradition, okay, the serpent, okay, the sea is chaos, the primordial abyss, the worm or great serpent, right, as we see here. So the Necronomicon passes itself off as sort of a book, an instruction guide in occult magic. It includes occult magic, black magic, that it actually warns the practitioner to be careful with, and lest you actually unleash these dark forces. So, for instance, this passage here from page 96 says, "Know first that the power of the conquerors is the power of the magic." Okay, spelled with a CK shows the influence of Crowley, and that the stricken gods will ever tempt thee away from the legions of the mighty, and that you will feel the subtle fluids of thy body moving to the breath of Tiamat and the blood of Kingu who races in your veins. Okay, be ever watchful, therefore, not to open this gate, or if thou must needs, put a time for its closing before the rising sun, etc., and seal it at that time, for to leave it open is to be the agent of chaos. Okay, so it's warning against doing this. But you can see that Tiamat, Chaos, Kingu, we have the blood of Kingu in our veins. It's tapping into that. And of course, Therion, okay, on another album, have their song "Blood of Kingu," where it positively puts a positive spin on the fact that we have the power of the demon in our veins. We are the children of the ancient ones, right? Conflating with the Lovecraft mythos, right? The invocation of the demon to rise, okay, to take back what is on behalf of Tiamat, what is hers, okay? The next page, okay, goes very similar here, right? Talking a bit more about Tiamat as this primordial chaos serpent and what she represents. Okay, queen of the ancient ones. She is more powerful than even Cthulhu himself, right? And so this brings us to the Florida connection here. So one of the earliest death metal bands, Morbid Angel, are clearly reading the Necronomicon with songs like the Ancient Ones. We have some of the lyrics here, right? And it is essentially, the band is posing as practicers of occult magic, but instead of heeding the warnings of the Necronomicon, they're actually following through on summoning these chaos serpents, summoning Tiamat and Cthulhu, the Ancient Ones, to rise and to raise the horns in blasphemy, which is a line that conflates them with the Theria, the beasts in the book of Revelation here. Okay, and I'm also note that this painting, Satan's Treasures, is in the basement of the lowest floor of underground of the Royal Museum in Brussels, which is a very appropriate place for it. That the underworld there. Okay, and so there's just countless examples of metal songs that draw from this tradition of syncretism. Okay, of associating beings like Apophis and Typhon and Tiamat and Satan, and invoking them to rise again and plunge the world into chaos, right? So this is a very popular death metal band from Poland, Behemoth, right? Talking about invoking the chthonic gods from beyond the stars, may Apophis grind their enemies' bones, the Draconis, the serpent, okay, rise up from the sea. Okay. Another famous band in metal is Dissection from Sweden, right? And this is a song called Black Dragon of Chaos, right? Raise your seven heads, let the ancient ones rule again, conflating Revelation and Lovecraft. Apep, dragon of devouring darkness, rejoice as Ra's creation dies. Okay, so rewriting Ra and Apophis there. The song continues invoking Tiamat, hark to your children's invocations and awaken from your dreadful sleep. We are the children of Tiamat with the blood of Kingu. And it mentions Typhon, make us one with thyself and walk the earth once again. So we are identifying with these chaos monsters, right, to return the world to its primordial condition. Okay. Just this year, right? This is a Greek band called 11th Ray. Okay. And this is an album called Reviving Tehom. Tehom is the Hebrew for the abyss that we see in the beginning of Genesis, identifying the abyss with the primordial dragon, okay, which is invoked by various names as we see here. Set, Satanas, Aphep, Drakon, Vovin, which is the word for dragon in Enochian, which is a language made up by the 17th century occultist John Dee. We see the Atlantidos Egregoros. This is Greek for the awakener of Atlantis. Atlantis rises again as sort of this anti-type, okay, to the worldly empire. And at the end, they invoke Hodrakon Homegos, the great dragon. Okay. This is a Finnish black metal band, Behexen. Okay, this is their album Nightside Emanations, and you can see that there's the theme of the primordial feminine associated with Satan. Okay, we see awakened Tiamat, we see invocations of Lilith, the dragon Haurha, okay, etc. And we see this kind of female serpent, mother deity, okay, on the album artwork. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, finally, is a concept album that came out a few years ago by a British band called Craven Idol, called Forked Tongues. And the album artwork that you see here was done by Eliran Kantor, an Israeli Berlin-based artist who has done a lot of recent album artwork for several metal bands. Does a really, really good job here. And what we see here is, just as with the song Typhon by Therion, we have a whole entire concept album that rewrites or has a sequel rather to the showdown between Typhon and Zeus. In other words, Typhon rises again in the modern day, challenges Zeus once again, and wins. Okay. And here's kind of an expanded version of the album artwork that you see here, and it tells you a lot. Okay, so here is Typhon rising from the eruption of Mount Etna, okay, challenging Zeus here, riding in on his chariot, already plunging the world into chaos. Okay, the sea rises, the winds blow. This is the three-headed dog Cerberus, showing that the underworld has become the overworld. Everything's topsy-turvy. Okay, and the band itself definitely does its homework in the types of imagery and text that it uses. So this is a flyer for a live show that they put on in London a few years ago, where they are using a Laconian black figure depicting Atlas and Prometheus, two rebels, two titans who challenged the might of Zeus and were punished for it, similar to Typhon here. And I kind of like the detail where they sort of cut off the top here, so it looks like Atlas is holding up the top of the poster here. Okay, we'll see him mentioned again in a moment. I don't have time to have us listen to a little bit of this, but I encourage you to listen to this because it's musically one of my favorite albums to come out in recent years. But I'll just move on to discussing kind of this what they do with this concept. Okay, so here is the track list to give you an idea. And so I'll just give you a few snippets of the lyrics of various of the songs here. These are not all of the lyrics, but some selections here. And what we see here, just like Morbid Angel, just like a lot of these bands, are using prayer language, various epithets to summon and get the attention of the deity in question, this being Typhon. Stir, son of Gaia, rage, son of the earth. Okay, connecting Typhon to his mother Earth, the idea that he is the rightful ruler of the Earth as the son of the Earth, rather than these upstart Olympians, who rebelled against Gaia, right? At the end of the song, Etna's lungs cough, right? So the volcano is about to spew him forth. The next song, The Wrath of Typhon, we see Typhon is awakening from his slumber, breaking his chains and beginning to ascend from the pit of Tartarus, where he has been imprisoned along with the Titans, and various other beings. And we see that this band is definitely engaging very closely with Hesiod's theogony here and sort of reorienting it. So, for instance, they are invoking the hundred-handers, the Hecatoncheires, right, who famously sided with the Olympians in the War of the Titans. And what Typhon is doing here is saying that they betrayed, their Mother Earth, right, and they need to repay that debt. And so they enlist on the side of Typhon here. So Typhon, the serpent, taking wing from Tartarus, is bringing allies, as the Therion song also said, to challenge Zeus here. The next song is Iron Age Devastation, and this is when Typhon emerges in the upper world and begins plunging the world into chaos, from the fortunes of Vulcan. And the song is called Iron Age Devastation. The idea that, well, the Iron Age is the age that Hesiod was writing in. He said that's our condition. And even in the modern day, we are still in the Iron Age. And now that age is coming to an end with the return of Typhon, who will bring in a new age. And you can again see here another the reference to Atlas. Atlas shall shed the weight of the world. The sky will collapse, the heavens will come down, symbolizing the overthrow of the heavenly gods. Next, Even the Demons is a song in which Typhon faces Zeus, calling Zeus the terrorist, the dictator. This evokes very much Prometheus Bound by Aeschylus, Prometheus Unbound by Shelley. The idea that Zeus is this cosmic tyrant, right, whose authority has been abused and who needs to be challenged, right? Except this is the modern day, and Zeus has grown idle. He's grown corpulent and fat and slothful. He is no match for Typhon anymore, especially since Typhon has a lot of friends now. He has conjured the whole underworld on his side. He has proclaimed a new Titanomachy. He's even seized the scythe of Kronos, right, that was used to emasculate Ouranos, right? So again, in Forked Tongues, which is the title track, we again see the charges of Typhon against Zeus and his various transgressions, right, in mythology, right, his dynasty of rape and blood, and his lies, that he is not a good king of gods and men. And it's actually, even though Typhon is the serpent, it is Zeus that has the forked tongues, right? That symbolizes his misrule. Later in the song, we see a replay of a part of the myth that's not in the Theogony. It's in other sources, in which Typhon actually stole the tendons of Zeus, ripped them away, and hid them. And what happens in the ancient source is that Hermes, the messenger god, actually the trickster god, steals the tendons back and restores them to Zeus, who is then able to defeat Typhon. And this time in this rematch, Hermes will be unsuccessful, and Zeus will be cast into the river of fire, the Phlegethon, to suffer the same fate of Typhon here. Okay. And in the last bit of the album, we see the final message, and this is where the band really breaks the fourth wall. Uh, they say, expel fearmongers, purist bigots, all gods reject, and that's imperative. They will all leave you all for dead. And so, this being a thrash metal band, they are very much in the tradition of punk and sort of the idea of no gods, no masters. Okay, so what we see here is sort of not just a rejection of Zeus, but the rejection of all gods and sky gods, right, who have tyrannized humanity, and we are now returning to a new golden age of humankind here and ending the Iron Age. So to sum up at the end here, um, so why alta megala Theria in heavy metal music? Well, again, this goes to chaos and Dionysus, okay, especially chaos, the idea of negation and and liberation that comes with it, right? Shaking off and resisting all order and returning to kind of this primordial void that was the original condition of existence, right? Syncretization of other traditions with the more kind of traditional Christian imagery of the archetypal rebel of Satan, the devil, the rebel angels, right? This is a universal tradition, okay? The appeal of the occult, okay, as a form of transgression, right? The access to forces, symbols, and knowledge that seems to precede the Christian tradition and therefore is kind of wielded against it in that regard. And as always, an interest in a return to the primordial cosmic and human condition, right? We are children of chaos, right? We are not angels, but we are beasts, and originally reconnecting with our authentic selves, right? And of course, this is part of the wider interest of heavy metal music in returning and fascination with antiquity in general, okay, as a more authentic era of human existence, okay, that had not yet been corrupted by modernity, okay. So with that, I will end and thank you for your attention.
This was really terrific. I joined the choir and sending applause and thanks, Jeremy. Very educational and of course very close to my heart. That
Yeah.
a rush that I just threw in there. Uh,
All right.
no, really. Uh, Good stuff. Thank
Yes.
you so
Yeah,
much.
so we'll conclude it there. A lot of thank yous in the chat. That was so fascinating. Thank you so much. As you know, from someone that knows little to nothing about heavy metal, it was really cool to hear about it.
Thank you. Yeah.
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 We're getting tens
Yes.
more thanks. So
Yes.
we're gonna log off.
All
Thank
right.
you all for joining in. We hope to put this online on our YouTube channel. So check that out. If you want to see it again, share it with friends. This has been fantastic, Jeremy. I hope you're coming down to Tampa anytime soon.
Yep.
And love to show you
Yeah.
around our museum and
Yeah.
particularly, of course, this little fellow that we used as our poster boy.
Yes. Yes. Very good. Yeah. I'll
All
see you
right,
guys. See you guys in May.
Thank you,
And thanks
hands
everyone.
up.
everybody.
Good
Cheers.
night.